here we are on turn 6. Yeah, here's where you're setting up for the overrun. Alright, so all this madness here in the Israeli backfield has finally wrapped up. I think I finally knocked out that AMX-13. It cost me way too many tank platoons in the meantime, though. But again, I get more victory points than you do for kills, and also for keeping Israeli units on the table or killing them, pretty much preventing them from breaking through off of that western edge. These Su-100s have fired last turn. They took opportunity fire. That's how they knocked out that other AMX-13, so they can't move this turn. My boy here refuses to rally, and meanwhile the rest of us are just getting butchered. So because I had to sort of had to clumsily redeploy most of these guys out of the north, like we were talking about earlier, my forces, if you look back on previous turns, have been sort of arriving like a platoon at a time, or 2 platoons at a time. And as they arrive piecemeal, they run across locally superior numbers of Israeli armor. Okay, so zooming in here, we kind of see the results, like I was saying. Pretty much all game, I've been shooting at his M50 Shermans. So if you'll notice the defense factor, that's the value here in the lower left of the corner. It's pretty much the same. His original World War II Shermans still have the 10. His upgraded M50 Shermans still have a 10, and even his AMX-13s have a 9. Now that might seem a little curious. The AMX-13 had very, very thin armor compared to these other tanks. The AMX-13 is also a lot smaller. So Panzer Leader and its cousin additions like Arab Israeli Wars do take into account not only how much armor a vehicle has, but how difficult it is to hit. A small unit will always get a bonus on its defense. But when I'm dividing my attack factors into his defense factors, I'm always coming up with basically the same ratios and thus the same columns on the CRT, Combat Results Table. So it just makes sense to always attack his most powerful units. Because if it's equally easy to kill his 3 different types of tanks, I'm going to go for the toughest one to reduce the fire coming back at me. So I did manage to knock out one of his M50 Sherman platoons. He's knocked out plenty of my armor. I now locally only have 1 platoon of T-34-85s left. I do have some more further north. We'll look at them in a second. But yeah, he's starting to really open up that corridor, that breakthrough corridor to the western edge of the table. And I think here is where we see the setup for that overrun. Well, the battle space is really beginning to compress. Again, all the stuff in the backfield is done. Burning tanks in the north, that's all pretty much fine and dandy. Where things are really coming down to the wire here is down here in the south. I do have 2 batteries of Su-100s that finally managed to redeploy from that other position. I believe they were up here in 2315. And now they're like my last stop. I'm hoping to maybe knock out 1, maybe 2 more platoons as he makes his rush off that western edge of the table. So what was your plan here to deal with these last 2 most powerful remaining Egyptian units?
I was planning to overrun them because that's the most important part of the game. But actually, I was trying first of all to set up all my units for the next turn so that they are eligible for the overrun attack, because overruns can really quickly go wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to get into that situation.
So if you guys will notice, in fact, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more because this deserves a bit of a highlight. If you guys notice the way Piotr has very tactically sort of set up his force. This first company of World War II Shermans, like original World War II Shermans, is here behind this dune, but more importantly, he's set up perfectly behind this dune line. So again, line of sight is always measured from center of the hex to the center of the hex. That's why there's a dot in the center of every hex to make it easier. He can't see, or I should say I can't see him. So he is very close. He's less than 500 meters away with 15 tanks. That's spitting distance in real-life tank combat. 500 meters is a joke. That's a chip shot. But I can't see him. He's perfectly screened behind that reverse slope. Speaking of reverse slope, he's got 2 more dune hex sides here. He did not go into 2720. Once he goes into 2720, I see him, and not only see him, but again, 500 meters, 2 hexes away, point-blank range. That's costing him at least 2 tank platoons. He does not do that. He keeps everything in what's basically called a reverse slope position. You don't go right up to the deck, to the dune line. You kind of hang back from it a little bit. And if the enemy comes at you, you're going to get that first shot at him. He's not going to get that first shot at you. So as you can see here, he's really setting up an execution here against me as far as gunfire goes. When he does his overrun, and he's denying me that second opportunity fire phase. I'm still going to get one when he does the actual overrun, but at least I don't get a second opportunity fire phase the turn before. So without any further ado, and like Piotr was saying, a well-done overrun attack is like the reason you play Panzer Leader. It's probably the closest Panzer Leader comes to a cinematic moment. It's just beautiful. It's tanks just completely smashing into each other. The tank is not physically running over the other tank. That's like physically impossible. But again, those 2 Su-100 counters, that's 10 Su-100 tank destroyers. And he's about to overrun me with, looks like, 45 tanks. 9 counters. That's 45 tanks in a hex 500 meters across. So, like I said, each hex is roughly an 8-foot table, and what's about to happen is his 45 tanks are going to overrun my 10 tanks, and they're, at least technically speaking, all going to be in that same hex for a brief moment. Brief moment in Panzer Leader terms. That's where your Flames of War games come in. That's what's happening. Any kind of Flames of War table is pretty much an overrun in progress. Because I got bad news for you. That's the only time tanks get that close to each other. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Boom! So let me zoom in on it, because this is worth looking at. Oh my god. So, yes, needless to say, he overran me. It was a hopeless situation at this point. So, long story short, take your first shot. I was being overrun from 3 directions. My only choice was where's to spend my opportunity fire. As all this Israeli armor is rushing towards me, my guns do get to fire. It's, do you kill one, or do you try and disperse 2 or 3 or maybe even 4? Basically, the enemy's running at you. Do you try to go for a couple of headshots, or do you try to pin down half a squad or a whole platoon or something like that? Do you choose between killing the enemy or saving your own life? And I went for a double dispersal. I tried to pin down his 2 most powerful, in fact I did succeed in pinning down his 2 most powerful remaining tank platoons. Those are his Shermans, and the rest of them then conducted the overrun and scored a success, and that destroyed my last 2 platoons of Su-100s. Now, this is where Piotr has to make some decisions as far as how to set up his overrun. Because, again, my tanks can only fire into 1 hex, or each one of my tank platoons can only fire into 1 hex. So this is kind of the reason why, if you are going to do a mass overrun like that, try to do it from multiple directions. Because if you all come in from one direction, he can disperse that stack, and now your overrun's not happening. Come in from different angles and different directions, and that way the enemy can only pin down so many of you. And then the other guys overrun you from the side or even from behind. There's also stacking limitations. You're only allowed to have 4 units in a stack. But yeah, that was my choice, and that's what happened. So any thoughts on this overrun, Piotr? It felt good, didn't it? It felt really good, didn't it?
Of course it felt good. Because your Su-100s, they killed 2 of my tank platoons, so it was some kind of a revenge. But it's really hard to pull off a good overrun, and I was really happy that I was able to. I only did it because I was running out of time. I had to get my forces moving towards the Suez Canal, and I couldn't do it because your guns were on my way. So I had to do it. Sorry again.
Oh, no worries. It was well done. Again, the point of this scenario was to kind of be like a tutorial. So, when the teacher is teaching the student and the student gets it, trust me, that's a happy moment for the teacher there. All right. So after that, it's just pretty much you still sort of have to track what's going on, even though the game is effectively over at this point. You still sort of have to track what's going on because, again, you only have a certain amount of time, of course, measured in turns. So the vast majority of his units made it off the table. Again, those two Super Sherman platoons, those two M50 Sherman platoons were dispersed. They have to make a rally check. They did a 4 down. Then they could then use the split move and fire rule to start to move, assuming they succeeded, and then get off the table on turn 10. So this is the situation on turn 9, this is the situation on turn 10. You'll see there's no Israeli tanks on the table. So even after the last Egyptian unit is destroyed, you still kind of have to go through the motions. Because if he had failed this rally check, these 2 tanks were back here. If he had failed those rally checks, and again, he needed a 4 down, so one of them could have failed, both of them could have failed if you roll a 5 or a 6. Now they don't rally. So then that means on turn 10 they rally, and then they use their split move and fire. They get half their movement, half of 5 is 2.5 or 2. They don't make it. And those are victory points for me. They did not make it off the table. Furthermore, that is 4 less victory points for Piotr. So again, even though the game is pretty much over at a given point, you still want to go through the motions in a game like this and at least make sure you know what's going on as far as who made it off the table, when did they make it off the table, because sometimes those sort of time limit constraints are important parts of the victory conditions.
And if I may add something,
Certainly.
When you have had turn 9 showed on the screen, you could see that Omar's platoon was still dispersed.
Yeah, he's still
turn 3.
he's still, I mean, he's now failed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consecutive rally checks. He needs a 3 down. It's 50-50. For him, it's a coin flip. In this game, I should note that the Egyptians have a morale of C, the Israelis have a morale of A. I'm sorry, a morale of B. Yes, it's true. Israeli units are not always elite morale A, especially in the earlier conflicts. Again, they were still trying to put a military together. So he could have easily failed one of those 2 rally checks on turn 9, and that would have been victory points for me. But he did make them both. They used the split move and fire rule to move to that hex, and then of course on turn 10 they're now easily in range to get off the table. So the only thing of significance that happened on turn 10 is our boy finally rallied. He rallied when the last Israeli tank left the table, and he felt brave. I don't know why he waited till then, but that's what he did. So these guys are not exactly winning the Egyptian Medal of Valor. Those SU-100s might be. Hopefully some of those guys survived their platoon destruction. Because they did a man's job back here. Look at, we do have 4 platoons. That's 20 tanks of Israelis, burning across this crossroads back here, and then again this sand area back over that way. And we did manage to prevent some stuff from escaping off the table by killing it. Yeah. And then as far as the final score goes, that was it. Not really the best result for the Egyptians. I will say that again, I've learned from playing Arab-Israeli wars for close to 30 years, on and off. Not 30 years straight, but off and on for at least 30 years. I've never won with the Egyptians on this game. I think I've fought someone to a draw once, because I was up against one of the worst dice rollers in the game, and my dice were on fire that day, and I think I came to a draw. It was also this other person's very first game of Arab-Israeli wars ever. So, yeah, this game, but then again, that's totally cool. That was the point of the scenario. The idea of this, what I use situation B1 for in Arab-Israeli wars, is almost a tutorial. When people are, interested in playing Arab-Israeli wars, I'm like, okay, let's try out this scenario. It's right out of the book. I did again tweak it. It uses a different map, obviously, and I changed the term limit on the Israeli breakthrough requirements. Also, strictly speaking, situation B1, because it uses only basic rules, does not use opportunity fire, does not use split moving fire, does not use a whole bunch of other stuff. So we were playing with some standard rules. That does affect the overall point of the game. But again, the purpose of the scenario was to sort of welcome somebody officially to Arab-Israeli wars. You give them the Israelis in situation B1, and you see how they do. And they learn whether or not they like the game or not. It's almost impossible to lose as the Israelis. I've literally never seen it happen. I've never seen the Israelis lose this scenario, ever. And I've probably played it almost 50 times. over the course of God knows how long. But still, 39-12, that's a high margin. So definitely, Piotr did that last overrun very well. He screened his units very well. He kept his intended axes of breakthrough concealed until at least the end of turn 3, which really screwed me up. I would definitely say well done. So yeah, definitely congratulations, Piotr, on a solid win here in Arab-Israeli Wars.
Thank you, Jim. What can I say? Some of my AMX-13 tankers, which were the MVP of on my side, because they managed to stop your overrun of my poor platoon. You know, they were just sitting with a banjo and shooting some Egyptian tanks. Bum, 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 bum.
Right now, people might say, well, this is the overrun that he prevented with his AMX-13s firing here from the southwest. That last AMX-13 there in Hex 1519, he winds up dying anyway. So it's like, oh, who cares? You evidently, or you ultimately failed in your mission to save that tank. Yeah, but what wound up happening was I had to kill him with these two Su-100s. And the Egyptians do not get the benefit of the split move and fire rule. It's just a difference in training between the Soviet-influenced Egyptian army and the Israeli army. So it's an advantage that, long story short, take your second shot. It's just an advantage that the Israelis have. Once he broke up this potential overrun, okay, he didn't ultimately save that AMX-13 platoon, but he forced me to kill that AMX-13 platoon with my most powerful 2 units. Which means that they could not move, because again, they don't get the split move and fire rule, and then once they weren't able to move, they weren't able to redeploy laterally south here and help out against this mess, and this is where it really mattered. These guys were hopelessly out of position. Notice they can't see anything down here. These intervening dune lines are in the way. So again, Piotr was very smart not to put his tanks in this hex or this hex where I could see them. He stays back. He uses dunes to divide the battle space to where only some of my forces can engage his entire force. He always maintains local superiority, even if he's outnumbered overall. And that's just classic wargaming, man. If you can force the enemy to engage all of your force with only part of his force, you can literally divide his force by space-time and engage only a piece of it at a time, and before you know it, you've got him chewed down to nothing. That is classic tactical wargaming right there. So definitely well done on that part.
No, thank you, Jim. What I can say, you're a great teacher, and I'm just a mere Padawan trying to learn all the, navigate through the marshes of Panzer Leader.
Well, I tell you what, you've now played 7 games of Panzer Leader. You now have a 4-3 victory tally over me, 4 wins, 3 losses, and you have played Scenario B1. So, no more tutorials. From now on, I'm coming for you. So pack a lunch.
Okay. And I think we should do something like a Panzer Leader 101 section for people that would like to try the game.
You know what, I really do agree with you on that. To date, that is still by far the most successful video we've had on YouTube. Is a stupid Panzer Leader tutorial that I put together in like 5 minutes. It was a live stream. It's not terribly well organized. It has no good, music. It doesn't have, it has no production value. I have to stream today. Okay, let me quickly throw something out there. And that thing has outperformed any of the Op Center series that take me 2 weeks to do. It has outperformed any of our other game videos. It's outperforming everything. So another Panzer Leader tutorial, perhaps done correctly this time, I think would be a great idea. We should probably do that one of these times.
Cool, I'm in for it.
Alright guys, this is Oriskany signing off for now. Again, thanks to Piotr for another great game, and again, congrats on the solid win. For now, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks very much for all your support, and we'll be in touch with everybody very soon.